So, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and greetings and welcome, and happy Mother's Day to the mothers that are with us, as well as the rest of us, because we all carry that divine feminine with us wherever we are. I'm so glad you're with me today. So, my topic is the fear of, and you get to fill in the blank. We've been talking about the shadow and the darkness and all of that so far this month at Ohm, and our theme, CSL's theme for 2023 is living out loud. And so I believe to live out loud, we have to allow ourselves to look at all of this, to look at what TJ just sang about, to look at our perceptions about how life is and how life is not, and continuously decide, is this still true for me or not? This was my truth last year, last week, 20 minutes ago. Is it still true for me? And then change our beliefs. Change, you might have heard, change your thinking, change your life. And that's kind of what happens but in order for us to change it, we have to allow ourselves to look at it and decide if it's still true for us or not. So we honor our mothers and grandmothers and the other feminine presences, yeah, that's a word, that have been with us over time, and recognize that so much of what we know, we've learned from someone else. Pretty much all of it that we learned when we were first born and growing up. In the book, The Four Agreements, Don Miguel Ruiz talks about our domestication, and we learned, thankfully, and quite possibly was your mother or grandmother or aunt or some other feminine presence, but it might have been a man as well, but someone in your life taught you things about looking both ways before you cross the street, washing your hands before you eat, brushing your teeth, ideally, at least once a day, not talking to strangers or getting in their cars. All of those things that we were taught about how life is and what we're supposed to do and what's good and what's not good. We were taught about what was scary and what was safe. I don't know about you, but I have a few things in my life that are scary to me solely because it was my parents' experience, and so I adopted it as my own. I don't like heights. Airplanes, for whatever reason, I have no problem. You will not see me skydiving. And if you see, if you see me skydiving, there will be a pig flying by, because when one happens is when the other one happens. But I have a fear of heights, and I've never fallen off a ladder. I've never had a situation. So where does the fear of heights come from? Where does my dislike and distrust of bananas come from? I've never gotten sick on a banana. It's just not a thing. Why don't I like bananas? Well, because my mother didn't like bananas, and my mother had a fear of heights, and so we learn what we're told and we adopt that belief and those fears and so forth, unless and until we say, that was then, but that no longer works for me, and I'm missing out on things by keeping that fear that's not really the truth for me. Several years ago, we were my late husband and I were in London, and they have the Eye, which is the British Airways sponsored Ferris wheel there on the bank of the Thames River. And I'm quite sure that there's an area of that railing that still has my fingerprints, because my husband, who is also Jerry, is like, for heaven's sake, come on, you got to do this. I'm like, all right. And so we did, and I'm hanging on for dear life. And there's no, Of course you're safe. Of course you're not going to fall. Of course nothing's going to happen. But it's my fear. It's my story. It's sticking to me. And I can keep that unless and until I decide that I'm missing out on things by having that kind of irrational fear. So I get to work on that. Many people learned that if they don't walk like us, talk like us, act like us, believe like us, love like us, if we don't understand them, then it must be scary. And they must be scary, and they must be wrong somehow. And so the opportunity, because I don't like the word challenge, the opportunity is, again, to keep looking at, what do I believe about this? What do I fear about this? Why do I have this reaction? And is it still true for me, or is it something that I'm ready to release? Many of us learned that it's only safe when we can see what's up ahead. That the dark is scary. And think of the dark and the bad rap that the dark has gotten. You know, the dark night of the soul, and in Star Wars, Darth Vader and all those of them on the dark side. And when we say that, when we think of that, we automatically think of bad or evil or wrong or horrible. But what if it's just the natural opposite of whatever it is we're thinking about? So we'll talk much more about that. But I need to see. I need to see what's ahead of me. I'm dating myself here, but I need my triptych. Were you, if years ago you were or still are members of the Auto Club, you could go into the office and they would do this route for you, and it's spiral bound, plastic spiral bound, and paper that was the route of wherever you're going. And so whenever we took a car trip, we always had our triptych, and it's got where the gas stations are, where the restrooms are. So go here and go here and go here. I don't think they don't do those anymore, and they don't do the tour books. I went in to get, I had friends going to Hawaii. I was highly insulted because they did not invite me, but that's a separate story. But so I was telling them about all the amazing places that I know on the Big Island, and so I went to the Auto Club and I'm like, hi, I need a tour book for Hawaii. And they said, well, here's the website. You go here and you click here, and yeah, I know this is 2023, and yes, I know we've progressed, but I miss the holding it in my hand. And you've heard me tell the story before, probably, that I used to go on MapQuest and the website and print out my directions so that I had in my hand before GPS and even after GPS. So I'm confident in my route, I'm holding it, and I know exactly where I'm going. Many years ago, I guest spoke and did a workshop at a church in, forget the name of the town, but this absolutely beautiful little town, some direction from Chicago. And so I had my MapQuest with me. And so you drive on the interstate, and then you get off the interstate and you drive and drive and drive. And then you get off the main road and you drive and drive and drive. And then you get off that little road and you drive and drive. And here's this absolutely gorgeous town out in the woods and so forth. So we had a wonderful evening and a delightful visit. And I'm headed back to my hotel in the city of Chicago. And I zigged when I should have zagged. And somehow missed the route. The problem with, this is another Sunday talk. The problem with absolutely knowing that this is our route and how it's going to be is that you miss out on the possibilities of something different and a delicious possible detour. We'll get back on that. So, okay. Not sure what to do, not sure where to go, not sure who to call. So I started driving. So the rental car, of course, gives me the direction. So I know that the lake, Lake Michigan, is north. So I'm driving north. Actually, that is north. Good. I'm driving north, and I will either find the interstate or fall into the lake. But somehow, some way, I will figure out where I am in the scheme of things. And so I drove, and I'm like, dear God, I've got a plane in 2 days. Am I going to get to civilization in 2 days? And of course, about 20 minutes later, there's the interstate, and all is well, and the lost has been found. But do we allow ourselves to come off that pre-published route, or route depending on where you're from, or do we stay in that, no, I said I wasn't going to do that, or I didn't say I was going to do that, so I have to stay on that route? Or do we allow ourselves that exploration? We know where we've been before. We know how to get there. But the expression is, or the term is, terra incognita. So some place I've never been before. I've not seen this. I've not experienced this. I've not eaten this. I've not had this, and it's new. I don't know about you, but I love to go places I've never been and to go exploring with my MapQuest now, that always tells me exactly what I need to know. I was in Anderson, Indiana last weekend, which is a suburb of Indianapolis. Did a workshop at a Unity Church in Anderson. Absolutely wonderful people, just had the best time, and it was so cool, and I had no idea where I was going, but I was led. I was divinely guided, obviously, thanks to the GPS, and just had the greatest thing. Because by not trying something new, by not allowing ourselves to say, I'm going to be safe because I'm always safe. One way or another, I'm always safe. By allowing ourselves to stand in our truth and have those new experiences and live in those new possibilities, if we don't do that, we're missing out. To me, we're missing out on the lusciousness of life. And that's what we're here to experience, is that newness and that difference and that lusciousness versus the staying in, well, I'm comfortable because out there is scary. Out there can be scary. Out there can be dark. And again, what is our perception? And I'll talk more about this. What is our perception of that word, dark? Do we go out after dark? Can we go and do what we need to do even after the sun goes down? Or do we kind of hunker? And either way is okay, but there's a big wide world out there after the sun goes down. Do we go for what makes our hearts sing and our tails wag? Or do we stay in our stuff because of what they will think? Absolutely wonderful book that I found, and I've talked about it before. Radically Content is the title, by Jamie Veron. Radically content. Now there's a concept. Because we're always, and this is another Sunday talk, but we're always, I want more, I need to finish that class, and I need to get that degree, and I need to get the new relationship, or get out of the old relationship, or do whatever it is, or clean the garage, or whatever. And maybe we need to do all those things, and it's wonderful, but if it doesn't make our heart sing, then is it really ours to do? But consider this from the book Radically Content. Oops. Oh, I forgot. Mother, I'm so sorry. So happy Mother's Day. This is from a few years ago. That's my mom and me. So what will they think is a 4-letter question that has killed more dreams and happiness than any other. Who is they, and why do we care so much about what they think? Who is this faceless group of people that is going to come for us if we don't measure up to their ideal? And why are we not really encouraged to examine this idea we take as an absolute inconvertible truth? It's exhausting trying to win a game that is designed to be unwinnable. If you've ever had that experience in your life that I'm done with this job, I'm tired of this job, I want to release it and move on, there will be people that say, good for you, that's absolutely awesome. And there will be people that say, well, you know, in this economy, or when you get to a certain age, or whatever. And so there will be people that will vote, yay, and there will be people that will vote, no. And at the end of the day, it's always our decision. Thank you so much for your concern and your interest, but I've decided to, or I decided not to, because at the end of the day, the only opinion that matters is ours. So, I love Facebook. You've heard me say that before, and you probably will again. I love Facebook. There's amazing stuff on Facebook, wonderful posts that I use for Sunday talks, some great ideas, some great photos. If you're friends with me on Facebook, you might have noticed that I've posted kind of some cool photos over the last few days. I love it, and I love the opportunity to keep scrolling because there's stuff. Again, using a purely spiritual term, there's posts that I don't agree with, posts that don't make my heart sing, that you just keep scrolling. And there are posts about how horrifically awful everyone is and everything is, and we're going to hell in a handcart and all the rest of that. And there are posts about how amazing this thing called life is, and how people are succeeding, and people are growing, and people are overcoming, and people are getting to the bottom and then going up from there. And so it's all about how we focus. But if we stay focused in those other beliefs, there is the potential for us to believe that it's scary and we need to live in fear. And so I was looking around on the internet, and Tony Robbins, the motivational speaker, on his website talks about living in fear and how we know that we are living in fear. And he says, if we're focusing on perfection, so it's got to be this way. Nope, put that away. Do that, don't do that. I really want to do that, but I might not be able to do it perfectly, and so I can't do it. But what if we did it and it came out at 87 2/3% rather than 100%? Is that okay? And who decides? Fear of, and I'm an expert on this topic because I did it for years and years and made decisions based on what somebody else thinks. And so if you've done that, you know that it's a difficult way to live. I don't really want to do that, but I need to because I should. My favorite word in the English language is should. And all the contractions, should and shouldn't and all that. Oh, if we could take a word out of the dictionary and send it off to space. Because if I'm doing this because I should, I probably don't want to. If I'm doing this because I shouldn't, then I probably want to. So perfectionism, that I can't do that because I have the fear of, if it's not 100%, then I'm going to look foolish, and what will they think? Settling. Do we settle for what we know because of a fear of what we don't know? Or do we allow ourselves to try something new, to go someplace new, to experience something new, to do something that maybe just scares us a little bit in a good way? it's really it's really exciting. When you allow yourself to do that, it's what we're here for, is to do something different and do something fun, especially that we've never done before. Procrastination. Now, don't tell anybody, but I have a calendar on my phone and on my in a printed one, because I'm from the old school and I want to make sure that I'm syncing both of them. And the good news about this calendar on the phone is you can change the day and time that you're going to do that very easily. And the thing about the calendar is you can write it in pencil, and so you can just erase out what that was and do it 3 weeks from tomorrow rather than this afternoon. And there's no judgment here. It's just what do we procrastinate, and what are we ready to do and cross off the list. And then numbing ourselves. We're not here to do that. We're here to do what makes our heart sing. And if it scares us, if there's a little fear, if it's against everything we've been taught, perhaps that's a perfect reason to try it, to do it, to go there, to eat that, to say, yes, I want to do that, to say, no, I don't want to do that, because that's what we're here for. I come from a family of stability and sameness, and for which I am incredibly grateful. My grandfather was in the Army, and so my grandparents and my mother moved about every 9 months or so, because he was stationed someplace and then got transferred, and then got transferred, and then got transferred, and that might have been your experience as well. And so when my parents got married, that was one of the commitments that they made was, so they built I was born in San Diego, moved to Escondido when I was 4, and so they built a house there, and that's where they lived for the next 55 years or so. So that's the house we grew up in, that's where they lived, that's where we stayed, because they wanted that stability and that sameness. And so there's not a fear, but almost a fear of moving, of going someplace new, of going someplace different and experiencing someplace new. Not a bad thing, no judgment here. It's just we didn't have that experience. And so my father worked away from home a lot, and he would go and do his thing during the week and then come home on weekends, but we were in the home base. And so the stability was wonderful, but we didn't have the opportunity to see and meet new people and new experiences. Think about, because sometimes new experiences in places we've never been before, we might consider as dark. I'm not sure what's going to happen. I'm not sure how I'm going to deal with that. And so that can be dark. But think about our perception of light versus dark. And again, like we talked about before. You've probably heard of or seen the yin and yang symbol. And what they remind us of is that both are necessary and both are combined together to make up our experience. So the yin, the black section, represents shadows, feminine energy, and generally the more mysterious side of things. Yang, the white section of the symbol, represents the sun, masculine energy, and things that are more out in the open. Neither is more powerful than the other, and both are needed in equal amounts for harmony to exist. So I must have that, I always do have that yin and that yang, and I can fight against one of them, or I can embrace and welcome both of them together, recognizing that that's the truth of who I am. So do we need to fear that dark side, or can we recognize it and accept it and welcome it as part of the truth of who we are and who everyone and everything else is. So consider, and this was interesting for me, consider the light feminine traits. So the dark side of the yin and yang, the black side, is the feminine, and that is forgiving, graceful, compassionate, nurturing, pure, intuitive, feeling, and empathetic. So the more feminine attributes of what we think of when we look at this. But then the dark feminine traits are fearless, fierce, seductive, passionate, authentic, powerful, and transformational. We honor the divine feminine today, and the feminine and the mothers and grandmothers in our lives, and not only as those women in the 1950s and 60s with the white gloves and the hat and just sitting quietly in the corner waiting for their husband to make the decision, but also the women of power and wisdom and passion. I was thinking about this, how far, thankfully, and there's certainly much more to be done, but how far women have come related to their experience of life. I love, for whatever reason, I love Lucy, and I was watching an episode last night. So they've gone to Hollywood. Ricky's made the movie. They're headed home, and they're on the train, and there is the fear of a jewel thief, and so the guy in the, if you've seen this episode, you remember the man in the next compartment. Lucy thinks is a jewel thief, and so they stop the train in Riverside. And the detective comes on board and knocks on the door, and they open the door, and the detective is talking to Mr. Ricardo and gives Mrs. Ricardo absolutely no mind, doesn't acknowledge that she's standing there. She's just standing there like a bump on a pickle, and he's having that conversation because she was just the wife. I know. But within... And if that's ever been your experience, you know that within you, even though you weren't able or willing to express it, within you is that, and was that, and always will be that passion and that determination and that wisdom. Because that's the truth of our being, whether we're expressing it or not. So even though we might look at it as dark, that's not true. But it's our perception of the word dark, because that's who you are. That's who I am. I am all of those things. So I am the dark and I am the light. You are the dark and you are the light. And so as we embrace all of that, it can be our experience, and we draw on the dark as well as the light, without judgment, without anything, recognizing that that's the truth of who we are. Thankfully, women have come a long way, and in the more to do, obviously, but in the 70s, I worked for an insurance agent, and he was probably mid to late 70s and very active in our church, and so he would have women whose husbands recently died come into the office and maybe flirt with him just a little, but more than that, talk with him about, what do I do now? Because my husband just died and they didn't know where the checkbook was, where the bank account was, how to write a check, all of those things. And so how important for us to be actively engaged in all the aspects of our lives and our relationships. But that's a separate story. So these quiet demure women were also and are also passionate and creative and possible, because my mother certainly was, and I know that each of us in this room, regardless of whether we're male or female, again, have all of these attributes of the dark as well as the light. Because, and you might have heard this before, well-behaved women seldom make history. That is absolutely true. And well-behaved people, I would say. So in this darkness, that's where the seeds grow. In the womb, that's where the baby grows. In the ground, after we've planted the seeds, that's where the creative process takes place. So as we allow ourselves to become more comfortable with the not knowing, that just because I can't see the path ahead of me doesn't mean that I'm not divinely guided and am able to take the next step and the next step and the next step. Even though I can't see all the steps, I'm okay to take the next one, and then the next one, and then the next one, drawing on this inner wisdom and this inner strength that each of us have. So often it goes back to our belief about God, Spirit, the universe, the infinite, the divine, whatever we choose to call it. When we do our affirmative prayer, our spiritual mind treatment, and say, and so it is, can we trust Spirit to do what we've told Spirit to do? Or do we have a plan B and a plan C? Because when we step out, when we have this faith and this absolute knowing, we can trust that I don't know how to get to wherever it is, but I know that there's a way, and I know that I'll be divinely guided. Because fear, consider two definitions. We can move from the false evidence appearing real to face everything and rise. That's what we're about, is to face everything and question it and look at it and then rise from there. So we celebrate mothers and grandmothers and the divine feminine today. If your relationship with your mother or grandmother or aunt was not all that it could have been, or all that you wish it was, if it wasn't a Hallmark card, today is a wonderful opportunity to forgive and recognize that as a process, not an event. So, but everything starts with a thought. So is there a way for me to begin to think about the possibility of maybe forgiving? And there is, but we start the step. We take the first step in the light and move a little further and move a little further so that we can ultimately release whatever it is and recognize that it just was. So your homework this week is to look at, and our homework is to look at what we believe about the light versus the dark and decide if it's really still true for us, or recognize that it's our perception of the word dark, and it's just all part of this thing that we call life. Because if we only go where we've been before, if we only do what we've done before, if we only think what we've thought before, we might be safe. But a wise person once said, a ship is safe in harbor, but that's not what ships are for. Because the truth is, we're always loved, we're always guided, we're always safe. So with that in mind, join me in the light for just a minute. So in the peace and the quiet of this moment, we allow ourselves to be reminded of our oneness with the God presence, with one another, and with all of life. And we give thanks for the divine feminine for the women in our lives, our mothers and grandmothers and aunts and sisters and whoever else have made an impact in our lives. We give thanks to them for their wisdom, for their guidance. We love them and bless them. We allow ourselves to feel what we feel about them and forgive when forgiveness is appropriate. And moving forward, we allow ourselves to be reminded of the truth of our being, that we are that. We are that light and we are that dark. It makes up the truth of our being, and we can draw on those attributes in our daily lives. The wisdom, the joy, the passion, whatever it is, that's all part of us. So for our time together, for this glorious day, for this beloved spiritual community, we give great thanks. And together we say, and so it is.